All right, in Betaflight 4.3, you can apply tuning presets. What can you do after tuning presets if you want to give it a little bit more performance edge? Do you have to tune from scratch? Well, no, you don't. So today we're going to talk about how you can take a preset and take it a little bit further to see if there is a little bit more flight performance you can squeak out of it. Of course, one of the first things you're going to want to consider is there's options in my presets at least, and many of the other presets as well. Now I try to keep the options as basic as I can. And so you can see on here, there's just a couple options. One is there's a 48K ESC PWMs. If you are running higher ESC PWMs, you're definitely going to check this option on when you're applying the preset. The other is the RPM filter and then the dynamic idle. Both of these options, the RPM filter will primarily help you with noise attenuation. It's not going to increase performance, but if you ding up props or you're in a situation where you're in a race scenario or, likely to be hitting trees and turtle mode and out of stuff, you probably want to have RPM enabled. But you can get great performance without RPM filter as well. Sometimes a little bit better performance. The other thing is dynamic idle. Dynamic idle, I find now in Betaflight 4.3 release is definitely worth checking on. If you do apply it, you definitely want to do some line of sight flips and rolls first just to make sure the values are right for your quad. But the values that I have set here of 35 in most of my presets seem to work for me at least, and I don't have any desync issues, so give that a shot. And I do notice that it does increase prop wash performance. Now, the next thing I'd recommend you taking a look at is going into the PID tuning tab and into the PID profile settings tab right here. There are basically two things that you can do to increase performance of your quad. I'm going to go ahead with the presumption that you're going to apply the preset and go ahead and fly it, and you're going to find that things perform pretty well. You don't have any issues that you're noticing, and you're all in all, you're like, this flies pretty good. But you're always wondering, could it fly better? Is there more that it could do? And there are some things where you can focus on to see if it can fly a little bit better for you. And those mostly come to PIDs and filters. Now, if we browse over to the filters tab, again, it's under PID tuning here, and go into the filter settings tab right here, you can see this is the setup I have for my filters with my presets, many of my presets, at least the 5-inch. And we're going to stick with the 5-inch since that's mostly what people are using Betaflight on. At this point with this preset, your filters are pretty much automatic. Essentially, the RPM filter is going to track the motors, and any motor vibrations, it's going to put notches on top of that. And then the second harmonic, or the, kind of the second ripple of those noises, it's going to attack that as well. And it's just going to read that motor RPM to do that. Any noise that might get through that, the dynamic notch has two notches that it's going to independently follow any miscellaneous peaks and put notches on top of that, anywhere from this 120 hertz value up to the 650 hertz value. So pretty much the range of 5-inch vibrations that you would typically see on a quad. After that, we do have the D-term filter, and it's on this slider you'll see here. I would not really recommend messing with this all that much. You get to a point with this filter setup that it is optimized enough that you're not going to gain that much more by really moving this slider up. For example, you're not going to really gain anything, and actually you'd have to enter into expert mode to actually be able to slide this up. So if you notice that you can't go up any higher than this, it's because you'd have to enable expert mode, and then that would let you get up there. But I wouldn't mess with it. You're really not going to gain anything. Same thing with down here, like moving this to a number 1 or changing some of these settings. You're not going to really notice any difference. And more importantly, if you do notice a difference, I would say, by reducing filtering at this stage, you will notice better returns by leaving the filtering as it is and then focusing more attentions on trying to get your PID gains higher. So let's talk about that. So going back over to the PID profile settings tab here, you can see we have a number of settings, and we're not going to get into all the little details of stuff. Most of the stuff you don't need to mess with. What I would recommend, however, is do check on this expert mode up here, just so you can have access to this slider down here. This is really the money slider for increasing performance. This master slider is going to move up all these gain values and move down these gain values. And if you don't have bounce back, you don't have wobbles or nose bobble or any of that stuff, it's, when you're flying it, it's all pretty good. You just want to know, most of the time it's prop wash. Prop wash is the hardest thing to get rid of. And to some extent, you can really never get rid of it because you can always just turn it a little bit harder. You do a turn or a 180 at a certain degree, or a split S or something, and you notice some prop wash. Well, if you change some things doing that exact same move, maybe you don't. But then if you move it or push it just a little bit harder, then you can start to zhuzh out a little bit of prop wash. So you're always trying to chase that rabbit a little bit. But most of the time people want to know, hey, is there some settings where I can make it a little bit more so when I do that certain move, maybe I don't see prop wash anymore, that I'd have to push it even harder. We're at like really the fringe of your flight performance envelope, which you don't really hit all that much. So that's really the goal that a lot of people are searching for. Well, this master slider down here is going to be the one you're going to want to look at. Also, just seasonal changes or altitude changes. If you're traveling with your quad, a lot of times you might need to move this master up or down depending on your altitude, or just the seasonal change, the density of the air, the humidity, things of that nature. So bottom line is if everything's flying well, if you want to see if you can get a little bit more performance out of it, you're going to go ahead and move this master slider up. I'd recommend 2 points at a time and just see how it goes. You can also do this in the OSD. You don't need to be here on the configurator, or if you have an app, if you have the SpeedyBee app or the Betaflight configurator on your phone, you can plug in and do it with those as well. So you really have a lot of options to make these changes. Of course, the process is, do a flight, move it up 2 notches, do another flight, and see how it goes. You should see prop wash performance increase. You'll get to a spot where the quad will be real fluttery. Like you'll arm it and you'll hear it go like, and that's you've gone too far at that point. The other way to notice if you've gone too far is just do a nice slow flip roll, or like flip, like go in the air and just do it, go like half stick to just roll back. And if you hear it like kind of twitching as it's doing that, yeah, again, you've gone too far. Same thing with the roll move. So you have that range, you can kind of get comfortable, and you'll get to know on your quad or set of quads, if they all are fairly similar to each other, kind of that range you can operate within. And it's really just the master. Well, that's it. Hopefully that was helpful. I do have a whole playlist on the #1 way to solve specific issues. So if you are applying a preset and it isn't perfect, you can check out that playlist. I'll make a link right here to that playlist set, and you can see the #1 way to use the sliders and whatnot to address your specific issues. If you found this video helpful, please do give it a like. Thanks, everybody. I hope this helps.